Hello and welcome to day 95 of 365 days towards racial change. My name is Tomlin's Nyback. Thanks for tuning in one more time here. What we're doing here is discussing black issues in America. We're talking about politics, sex, violence, drugs, money, you name it. The idea is it's about the human condition, but we're focusing on the black human condition in the United States. It's a little slightly different animal. Um, for those descended from slaves, that this country has a history of slavery on steroids. I like to use the phrase exploitation of a group of people to the nth degree. And the problem is uh, certain powers that raped this certain community and not um, repaid or makes gestures far few in between to reconcile um, the effects of those hundreds of years of domination and exploitation. Two thoughts that are emerging as I go along in this project are thought of conditioning. That first thought has two parts. Does the African slave conditioning mentality get perpetuated? Is it being passed down from generation to generation? Or are we, or is the black group or community neighborhood just perpetuating and continuing to propagate the dysfunctions, ignorances, and all the negatives um, that have come out of that experience from hundreds of years ago. And conversely, does the white mind of expectation of favor, exploiting others, domination, power, is that passed on from generation to generation? Stick around here, you'll get an idea of my views on that. But I want you to do your own research, your own critical thinking about those issues. Now, the second thought is kind of a burden for financial literacy, um, understanding good debt, bad debt. Um, those are kind of new terms to me, getting some financial literacy. I think black folks need to emphasize this more in their homes. I wish I had taken the times I played Monopoly with my family more seriously, or that it could have been more teaching and learning experiences. Any financial game to help me get to understand and know, oh, what this world is. Um, what this world's about financially. It's not taught in school. It's not educated in school. School is a tool for the blue collar class to get the masses brainwashed and conditioned to believe that someone else or some organization is going to bring them through and help them out later on. And these are built on some sound models and principles, but they faded away. Those are actually things my mother and father took advantage of, and it worked quite well for them. Not in my case, and in my case, I could say the argument may be, well, I was messing with drugs and alcohol and homeless for for a long time and didn't take advantage and didn't start saving or early at an early age and whatnot. That's not the whole story of what my life or struggle will look like financially as I continue living. A lot of powers that be, you know, put me in a classroom 13 years, uh, and the last 4 years of that properly were bus rides, long busing, stuff like that. So I don't want to go on with that. That's not what we're going to talk about today. But I want us to think critically, think about what our children are being exposed to. We've got to, if it's not going to be in the home, maybe we can do it in the church. If it's not going to be in the church, maybe we start our own community organizations. It's the information age, internet. What I'm encouraging everyone to embrace more financial education and literacy, and I want to lump into that political understandings as well. That's very important. Um, I'll leave it with this. I started watching CNN a lot, which has it's good and bad, but it made me realize how much, like while I'm out there working, I'm paying all these taxes, all these people are grabbing at my time and my labor. And while this is going on, this political circus is happening. Huge amounts of resources and time are being spent behind my back. Decisions are made for the country and communities, without my say. And, I passively just live and exist here. No wonder I get pushed around and whatnot. I'm glad it got so intense that I went to search for some meaning, some understanding of what was going on in the world. Now, part of this, my motivation for doing this project, though, this probably was a long time coming, but it was affirmed by a man named Dr. Claude Anderson, and he speaks more eloquently, written many books on the issues of black race in America. 3 books I read of his was A Black History Reader, 101 Questions You Never Thought to Ask, Black Labor, White Wealth, Search for Power, and Economic Justice. We reference these texts heavily all through the year. We're going through a different series right now. And Powernomics, his national plan to empower Black America. These materials are dated somewhat, but the solutions, the problems is timeless, and it's relevant because the change is extremely slow anyway. So it's even though it's more than a decade old, we're still looking at a lot of material to cover. We take a fictional look at slave life in America, mid-1800s, Uncle Tom's Cabin. See Uncle Tom, various other slaves in their situations coming up through slavery. America behind me, you see the hashtag #US2 movement, and kind of a response to the hashtag #MeToo movement. Hashtag #MeToo is more white women essentially, and now hashtag #US2 is more black women hanging out. Also, Black Enough, BLAGGENUF, another great place to visit. It's the information age. If you are business minded, go to the blackbusinessschool.com. Tell Dr. Boyce Watkins that Tomlin's Nyback sent you. He's got some great products and curriculums over there. Also, I'm going to lump in Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad guy, as I'm reading a lot of his material now to improve my financial literacy. I don't just want to talk theories to you. I'm a kind of person, I'm really committed to kind of practicing what I preach to a degree. I am human. Financial literacy, understanding racial positions, those are serious topics, and I'm doing my best due diligence in there. All right, day 95, we're still going through our series of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, having mock interviews with all these dead white guys, 56 of them total. Oh, I just got a question from one of our subscribers. Okay, was there a black signer of the Declaration of Independence? I didn't go to the library or anything. I just did my quick internet search, like we probably do more nowadays. And you know, reliability may or may not be questionable, but what I stumbled upon, a guy named John Hanson, I believe. He was not a signer, but he was the president of the one of the Continental Congresses, if you understand some of that going on. His father was an indentured servant who purchased his freedom, and because of his indentured service status, that kind of is the foundation of the myth or not of John Hanson being a descendant of kind of a black person. You know, they're just making a lot of leaps in there, but there's no John Hanson as a signer of the Declaration anyway. So, but I just want to acknowledge I do answer questions. This is a private email list, so you know, you can notify me here, and we'll try to connect. It's important that this list be private. Part of the exclusivity of racial change here. Now, so first, Abraham Clark, born 1726, 1794, and also referenced the brief notes in my comments section. He's a New Jersey representative, very, very familiar with that state. Garden State, blueberries, cranberries, Jersey Shore, a lot of free PR we get from New Jersey, northern New Jersey, where, oh, excuse me, where I won't say this explicitly or as though I know, but you know, you got your mob families do their work up north in New York and then come home to Jersey suburbia and whatnot, possibly. I don't know. But New Jersey's a great state. Hello, everyone from New Jersey. So he was a Jersey representative. He was actually, as he was going through his development, political process, and the bureaucracy of the colonies was changing, you know, because they came together and met and all this stuff. You know, when you get these gatherings, I'm understanding that for politics and anything, as people gather, you need some organization, you know. So initially it represented England, but as time goes on, people get familiar, get possessive of their space, right? Their space, you know. Generations are born that don't have so much allegiance to the crown of England. What I'm trying to say is that these political arms that were probably more just representations of England's interest over time became representations of the interest of the colonies. Therefore, as that grew, as minds changed and there was turnover and whatnot, the Continental Congress wanted people more in line with an independent colony state. So they began pressuring loyalists. Loyalists being someone loyal to the crown in England, loyal to English rule. They started to put pressure on, you know, you start frowning on, you know, they marginalized these people, excluded them probably from political decisions, conversations about change and what was good for the colonies. The loyalist is going to promote what's good for England's interest in the colonies. And the colonists, the patriots, are going to be like, no, we need to kind of resist, step back away from this a little bit as they went on. So I say that to say that Abraham Clark actually replaced some of New Jersey's loyalist interest in the Continental Congress. He's a Presbyterian. The Presbyterians, they have a kind of a church government thing going on. It's a Protestant arm. Many of them, all except for our Roman Catholic friend Charles Carroll, everybody had a Protestant vein, leaning. The Episcopalians, the Congregationalists, Unitarians, and all this. There's so many Protestant families out there. That's a kind of a good thing, because you'll hear the joke. You don't want us all in one group, because, well, one attack, one bomb can take us all out. But since we're spread out and appear to have some differences in views and values, we can survive. We're spread out. Okay. So he's Presbyterian. And now he was not a slave owner. He was a lawyer. Some of his trade was surveying. So he knew topography, land, and stuff like that. Being a lawyer, so he's got an altruistic, benevolent bone in his body. He's probably used his practice not explicitly for gain, but he's probably helped out a lot of folks along the way, and he could. I find the lawyers, as we come across here in this study, they're going to be there to stand in the gap against whatever pressure from England is coming to exploit an individual or individuals there in the colonies. He saw the pressure on the merchant, blacksmith, planting trades, and from England, because remember, England just like not only was England importing slaves, condoning slavery, and, had a massive slavery trade. So their idea of their return on investment, is expectations are very high. So the colonies are not equal partners. The colonies are the machine, they're tools for England. The people there work and send resources back across the Atlantic Ocean. That they didn't have a political say and all this equality and whatnot. No. So he was he had a strong desire to see that change. And anyone, look at whatever you consider your space. You don't want anybody coming in and out, going and coming and taking resources at will, disrespecting you. And so he's here in the colonies, and he has no allegiance to the crown, and he wants to see some change. Next person up is George Clymer. I hope I'm saying that right. 1739, died 1813. And he was a representative from Pennsylvania. Philly, I think, is in the notes. And he was one of your he was a protester. He was He'd be your nonviolent resistance type people, sit down strikes and things like that. I picture him very, you know, going against the system and stuff like that. So he actually leads demonstrations, demonstrations against the Tea Act. You go Google some of that. Stamp Act. Stamp Act was when England, they said, all printed stuff needs to be printed on paper embossed with England's seal. That's the Stamp Act. That paper had to be stamped to be used. It's a stupid tax. But that's the thing about white. Well, I shouldn't say white folks. It's over everything with human beings, black and everything. Humans have this condition. We want to just ooze our influence on everything. We want to touch all over everything. I could think about your slave and plantation owners sleeping with their black slaves and whatnot, taking virginity at will and whatnot, and then handing them to the male slaves, ordering them to marry them, raise children, and whatnot. But having always touching and violating something, not appreciating that virgin landscape, whether it's physical, out in the world, it's this rapistic nature, So England, has this Stamp Act, so whatever you print, it's got to be on stamped paper. So it's a monopoly. You've got to buy from this guy, wait for shipments. I don't know specifically if the presses were in England or if they had some here on the homeland. They probably did, and they licensed that service out. But it's almost like prima nocta, where the king hearing there's newlyweds. Oh, well, that must be a virgin. So he goes, takes this woman for an evening of sex and gives her back to the husband. That's very real. So England had that openly. So from paper, everything, any transaction, it's just like the letterhead, company letterhead there. They want to ooze their influence on it and distribute it. And it's a sign. It gives a sign of who you're dealing with and things like that. It's up there with the Book of Revelation. Of having a mark on the hand or on the head where you're you can't do business unless it's marked. So you come with a book or an announcement that's not doesn't have that English embossment on there. It says something about you, your loyalties, your allegiances, in how you do business. Now George was a merchant as well, and this is one of the rare merchants, businessmen with no slaves, and that's because he was a Quaker. He's listed along. He's Episcopal along with Quaker. So the Episcopalians have their pope and whatnot, but there's associated with this Quakerism, and they're committed to nonviolence. They're the first group to speak out against slavery in the colonies. I read a Civil War account of 3 Quakers who were drafted, right, and they refused to fight. So their punishment was to be bound to a gate with their hands over their heads, and that all day. And something about circulation, blood flow, whatnot, but their hands would bleed from this torture. But they refused to fight. They were that committed to their religion. So they had their allegiance to God led them to resist slavery, resist oppression, but there wasn't quite enough thought to make the lives of slaves better, let alone emancipated. But again, I think he would be along the lines of the other signers of the Declaration of Independence, saying, you know, we got to just have a starting point. We'll get to the slaves, and that's just, I'm seeing that's just been the attitude, and that's going to continue to be the attitude. Like, black people need to get themselves in position to be the priority, to be the central conversation focused all the time. Without that, we're just at the mercy. We keep getting this handed down, second-hand liberty out of this country and the world when we bled and all this stuff, lynchings and whatnot. But that is this trickle down liberty that we experience. I mean, it has its roots in the foundation of the articles that on which this nation rests, is to be that class of people that you get to, you know, and that we're the only people treated like that. Immigrants aren't treated like that, and we want change. We want change. But see, this is a way to understand why the present rate of change and its character and degree is the way it is. It's because even right down to the foundation, the roots of these the papers that tell how this nation, what this nation is, that define the nation, those documents are all about this kind of trickle down liberty, where the blacks are the people that we'll get to. Until then, we need to rape and pillage, exploit, rob, lynch, disperse families and whatnot, because we need our priorities. Once our priorities are met and in place, then we can do more for you. There were, we've come across a couple guys that were dissenters of slavery, but not to the degree. The war over that would come later, and it wasn't. That's not all the reasons for the Civil War. There's a lot of purely economic reasons for the Civil War, but the black issue just was not a priority. And this idea that we still do it today, we still sit back and wait and hope that this white power structure is going to open the floodgates of heaven and allow us to participate equally. I think that day is still a long way off. At the bottom of our time here, two more guys out of the way. That's Abraham Clark from New Jersey and George Clymer from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Look, we're just moving right along. Day 95 out of the way. I don't know. Maybe we should have some celebration. I don't know. Maybe we'll just keep kicking it through. Tomlin's Nyback. That's me. Thanks for hanging out. 365 days towards racial change. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.